Hello, everybody. Today we will start to discuss a little bit more of advanced genetics. These are things that go beyond basic dominant and recessive relationships here. And so let's just jump right in. Our first example here is called incomplete dominance. Incomplete dominance is when neither allele is dominant nor recessive. And so usually what happens is that they end up blending together. Here's one example where there are two alleles, one for red coloration in flowers and one for white. When you get heterozygous individuals with one red and one white gene, instead of showing red because R is capital letter and dominant, what happens is they blend together and make a pink organism. So they blend traits. That is incomplete dominance. That is different than our next example here, which is codominance. In codominance, both alleles are clearly expressed at the same time. Blood cholesterol levels and chicken feather colors are some of the main examples, but I like to use this example here with cows. So cows usually have two dominant colorations, a red coloring and a white coloring. Well, in cows where you have heterozygous individuals, where they have one red gene and one white gene, you get this coloration which is known as roan, where the cow is both red and white speckled. Both traits show up at the same time. Some cells will show up with red colorations and some will show up with white colorations. That is codominance. Next example here is you can have traits with more than just two alleles. Human blood types have three alleles. Fur coloration in rabbits have four different alleles. And so you can have these traits where there's just not one dominant or one recessive or two traits that blend together or so on. You can have 3, 4, even 5 alleles. Each individual can only have two alleles, but in a population, there can be more than two alleles. So let's look here at fur coloration in rabbits. You have this big C here, which is for full coloration. So any of these rabbits with a big C have these big classical rabbit colorations here. And then you have this CH, which is for more of a chinchilla color. This C, and then H at the top, which is for the Himalayan color. And then if they have two recessive alleles, they could be albino. So 4 different alleles, which can lead to 4 different colorations of the rabbits. Human blood typing is another classical example, and we'll do some practice with this next week. But for human blood types, there are 3 alleles, where there is an allele for A blood type, an allele for B blood type, and an allele for O blood type. And A and B are both dominant, and O is the recessive allele. So here's an example, right? So if somebody had type A blood, they can have 2 A alleles or an A and an O, because O is also recessive. If they have type B blood, they have 2 B alleles or a B and an O. There's also a phenotype for blood type AB, and that would lead to the genotype, blood type AB. And then if somebody has type O blood, they would be 2 O's or 2 recessive alleles. And so these are the blood types, and these are the 3 different alleles that you can see. One final example here for a little bit more of advanced genetic stuff is polygenic traits. So there are several times where traits are produced by the actions of several genes. Eye colors, coat color in dogs, skin color in your own body is controlled by more than one gene. And sometimes some of those genes can have multiple alleles. They can be codominant, incomplete dominant. And so we start to see why genetics is a little bit more complicated than just simple dominant and recessive relationships. Your eye color, for example, is coded for by at least 3 different genes, and one of them at least is a codominant situation. So it becomes a little bit more complicated for for traits that follow this pattern here. Last little bit here as we wrap up. So it says genes and the environment. So environmental conditions can affect the expression of certain genes. So the phenotype of an organism is only partially determined by its genotype. The rest of that organism's phenotype is determined by its environmental conditions. How many of you know somebody or yourself were born with a certain hair color, and over time your hair color is slightly changed from environmental conditions? My daughter, for example, was born with blue eyes, and over time her eyes have gone from blue to green to hazel, all because of the environmental conditions that she has faced throughout her lifetime. And that happens for many different traits. Genetics codes for part of it, but then you have the environmental conditions that code for a second, or the environmental conditions that code for the other part of it as well. So true genetics are a blend of the genes that make them up and the environment that people face throughout their lifetime. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you have a good rest of your day.